Hi, I'm Jennifer, and welcome back to the Crew of Japan podcast, a weekly podcast where we take you on audio journeys through Japanese culture. Welcome back to our podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about what every Japan traveler thinks about when planning their trip to Japan, and that's Japan's 4 seasons. Notably, someone could be asking themselves, when should I visit Japan? Japan is pretty famous for its nature, and that's just one of the many things that signify the 4 seasons. What can you expect when visiting Japan during each season? We'll go over all the things you should maybe consider when choosing which season to visit Japan, from tourist levels to the seasonal foods. Let's get started with this episode. All right, so today I have Doug with me today.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. You and me again, buddy.
I know. Tag team, back again.
So today we're going to be talking specifically about, and you could consider this like a travel episode because, one of the things that a lot of people consider when debating on when to go to Japan and when to travel around is, what season to go in.
Yeah. And one thing you'll hear very commonly when speaking to, like, if you're talking to a Japanese person, especially in Japan, when you're visiting, and someone's like, "Oh, did you know Japan has 4 seasons?" I guarantee at some point during your trip, someone will say that. It is a common phrase, and it's pretty. I mean, everywhere has 4 seasons, right? But in Japan, they're very distinct and colorful at that too. They're very much, I don't want to say clear and defined, but you can definitely see an image of Japan in the spring, the winter, the summer, and the fall.
Yeah.
So you don't be surprised if someone does pull you aside. But by the way, did you know that Japan has 4 seasons? And then you can actually turn around and say, actually, they have five because there's rainy season too. They'll love that. But but yeah,
Well, yeah, let's start off the conversation then. Let's start off with winter, the winter season in Japan. Obviously, the first thing that we think of when we think of winter is snow.
yeah. It's I would say um, that winter in Japan is very cold.
Agreed.
And that it is somewhat accentuated, especially when I was working there. Um, you know, my apartment and my schools, a lot of those buildings don't have like central air or central heating, so there isn't as much of an escape as, like, for an example, in the States. If it's cold outside, you go inside, you turn the heater on, you're pretty good. You can still do a space heater or something like that, but it's not as much of an escape sometimes when you're going indoors or traveling around, especially in the winter. Those central heating opportunities may not be as prevalent as they are outside of Japan.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if you love snow, winter is perfect for you to go. I mean, all of Hokkaido and pretty much all of northern Japan, you will find snow. Now when you get to like the more central regions, like Kansai and Kanto, um, you know, snow is not available all the time. It's, come and go here and there kind of thing. It's not like a constant flurry of snow.
Right. You get your spotty snow. And to be honest, I've heard more stories that recently in the past few years of snow happening more often. When I was there, the 3 years that I there, I think in Iwaki, it snowed like once during that whole time. And I'm basically, Iwaki's kind of situated at the very eastern corner of Tohoku at the bottom, right before it turns into Kanto.
Hmm.
So we're right on the beach. It's kind of a tropical climate in that regard, more tropical than further inland. So we rarely got snow, but this year and last year, I heard so many stories about, oh man, we got so much snow this year,
Yeah.
and I just never saw it, but I believe it.
You can't predict snow. It just kind of happens. So
I
if you
know.
really want to see snow, definitely go up north and even to the Hokkaido region because that's where you're really going to find all that snow. Um Specifically in Hokkaido, you'll have like a ton of snow festivals and stuff like that to really enjoy. I mean, you'll be freezing your butt off probably, but
Oh yeah, I kind of equate. that Tohoku, especially further up north, Tohoku, I would equate it somewhat similar to how you would imagine like Wisconsin or Minnesota's winters.
I think I'll agree with that.
Very cold,
Yeah.
very snowy. Just there's no real escape from the snow. It stays cold for a good chunk of the year. So just if you wanted to kind of imagine what it would be, that's what I would probably equate it to. I worked in Minnesota for a while, so I got to experience that firsthand, and I definitely agree that that's probably what the best comparison would be.
But you know what? For what it is, they do a good job at capitalizing on that because you have like a bunch of ski lodges and there it's really made for that. So that area, they do snow well.
Yeah, yeah, especially like in some areas where they have some mountains and whatnot, they have ski resorts, snowboard resorts, a lot of outdoor onsen that capitalize on that type of environment that they want to that a lot of people you imagine going into an outdoor hot spring in the winter where there's snow all around you and you're just soaking in this hot bath
Perfect.
outdoors. It's amazing. The walk to and from that
Not so
water is not so
amazing.
amazing, but that's an image that people have of a wintry type of a
Yeah.
like itinerary item while in Japan. Um, but there are some major holidays that you do need to plan around if you are going to travel in the winter.
Yes.
First and foremost, and the most obvious is New Year's. And
It's a big holiday in Japan. Like you will not avoid the crowds. If you're going there for New Year's, expect huge crowds.
Yeah, a lot of people go home. To so if you go to Tokyo, it will still be crowded. It will still be depending on where you go, but a lot of people who are there maybe they work there, but they may go home. They're not from that area originally. They may go home to their families' homes in wherever they live. So for example, my sister's, I'm sorry, my wife's sister's friend, her and her husband live in Saitama, but their family lives in Ibaraki. So every year at that time, for about 3 or 4 days, they would come back up to Ibaraki and spend that Oshogatsu period, that New Year's period, together. So there is that one time a year where a lot of people go home, and part of Oshogatsu is what they call Hatsumode, which is your first shrine visit of the new year. That you'll know is you may have seen pictures of this, Jen. I don't know if you've experienced this firsthand or not, but
I mean, for all the otaku out there, I mean, you've probably seen it in anime and
right,
manga.
right,
It as much as manga and anime don't get a lot of things right, it gets that
yeah,
right. It's just a big crowd of people.
stampeding a shrine, basically.
Yes.
Yeah,
So, when we say to watch out for the New Year's holiday, we're not saying watch out because there's a bunch of tourists around. It's literally the Japanese are traveling. So you're in the midst of them, going back home, going to do this, preparing for the new
yeah,
holiday. A lot of businesses are
yeah,
off, they give off. So you need to really consider that if you're planning to go during the new
yeah.
year.
Travel can be a little bit more expensive, or less
Hmm.
available if you're booking like reservation type trips around that time. um Shot like you just said, Jen, the shops shutter up for 5 days, leading up
Yeah.
to New Year's, and then the first technically Oshogatsu is the first through the third, so they don't really resume business as usual until January 4th or so. So a lot of
Mm.
shops in Tokyo, I remember the one time I stayed over Christmas and New Year's was in Tokyo, and I remember walking around in the area I used to live in that was kind of hustle bustle. It was still hustle bustle to some extent because it is Tokyo after all, but it was kind of a ghost town in terms of shops being open. A lot of the mom and pop shops are closed. They don't bother with it, and it's kind of understood. So it's not something where people are frustrated. Oh, I can't go to my store; it's closed. Everyone does it. Um,
Yeah.
so just something to be aware of, and especially if you're planning on going to any shrines or temples, there could be waits, lines that you have to stand in to go make to do the the tribute at the shrine. Also, if you're traveling by car, I don't know how many people would be doing that, but if you are traveling by car, um, get ready for traffic because I the one time I did this visiting my in-laws back in 2017, um, I want to say we were in the car from what would normally be about a 15-20 minute drive. We were in the car for about an hour and a half.
Oh my
Yeah, it was a
goodness.
one lane highway just to get to this really big temple that everyone's going to, and that's what everyone does. And it's not always just the first New Year's Day. It may be the next day. It may be the second. People try to space it out a little bit so that way they don't get slammed with the crowd, but they still will hit it. Those
Yeah.
shrines are pretty well frequented during that little time period. That's when they do a lot of their, I don't want to say business, but that's when they expect a lot of their crowds.
But even though we're saying like this as like a thing to be prepared about, and you may be discouraged to go during winter, we still encourage you to go because there's still a lot more, to really experience. And one of the things that I love, and I'm sure Doug loves, is the food.
Oh yes, yeah.
We are the two foodies, and we have some seasonal foods that you can find in winter. So
Yeah, so one of those is it's, I mean, you could find this all year round, but it's a kind of like a specialty, quote unquote specialty, at New Year's, and that's mochi, which are those like rice cakes. And one of the traditional things, you may have seen pictures of this before or seen it in action, maybe, um, is they'll have the rice, this like kind of squished rice. They'll put them into these little like wooden containers or barrels, and then you take a mallet and then you kind of like hammer the rice until it's kind of nice and gooey and ground together into a like mochi style thing that you would typically expect out of mochi, the texture and the feel for it.
yeah, it's very chewy.
Yeah, so they typically would make mochi leading up to New Year's, and then it's kind of a New Year's dish. You'll see a lot of decorations around where they'll have like mochi stacked on top of each other. At the very top will be a tangerine, and then afterwards you would eat that mochi. And so I know my tradition in my family. Every New Year's, even though we're in New Orleans, we'll have mochi in our house, and not handmade, bang, created from scratch, but we'll buy some mochi from the store and heat it up, and I'll have that on New Year's Day. And then
Oh,
there's
but
an
why not? I can totally see you with a little mallet just going at
I
it.
would love to. Yeah, I just I don't even know where to begin to look for that. They have another dish actually. It's called ozoni, which is you put mochi in this hot soup. It's not miso, but there's a soup that you would put it in, and you eat that together.
Are you talking about the red bean soup?
No, no,
Oh, okay.
this is something different. It's kind of a more of a clear soup, that you would
Oh,
put the
okay.
mochi in, kind of let it soak, and then
Because
you
I've
would,
had the red bean one before, and that one's really good.
yeah, yeah. But, that's my, I look forward to it. Kinako mochi is my
Hmm.
favorite. That's like kind of the soybean powder. Um, the
Well, now that we're talking about New Year's, another thing that really relates to the New Year holiday and food wise is amazake.
mhm, yes.
It's like a warmed up rice wine. I mean, it's both alcoholic and non-alcoholic. I've seen both versions. So for those of you who are maybe underage, don't worry, you can still have some really nice warm amazake during that time. But pretty much that's really what it is. It's supposed to be really sweet. It's not supposed to be like a harsh drink. It's supposed to be sweet.
Y
Um, but the Japanese standard of sweet, not our sweet.
yeah, yeah. I've this is some good stuff. That warmed up sake is really good. Um, Another one that you may see, especially in convenience stores, that what we talked about a couple podcasts ago, is oden, which is these kind of like more traditional items that are kind of sitting in a hot pot of sorts or heating little segments. You'll see in a convenience store, you can kind of scoop it out, and they'll have like little containers that you can kind of take to go. Um, there are some things in there that look very appetizing, and then some that don't. I'm not a huge oden fan, but it is something that in the colder months, those are more common because it is a warm dish.
Yeah.
You may
What
see
it's
it.
supposed to be is like the various ingredients that they do have in the broth. those ingredients are supposed to be like more absorbent so it gets the broth flavor because a lot of those ingredients sometimes don't have really any taste like a
Yeah.
fish cake. It doesn't really have a taste. So there it's supposed to be able to soak up the broth taste so that way it'll be a little more flavorful. But yeah, it's mostly just for warming up honestly. I think a lot of people eat it for the warmth because it's so cold.
Yeah. That's pretty much it for winter, huh? I mean,
Well, one other thing about winter, which sounds surprising to some people, but it's not surprising in Japan, is that strawberry season begins.
oh,
And you'll see this a lot if you go before New Year's because Christmas cakes, they're everywhere.
yep. Yep.
Everywhere, Doug. Everywhere.
That is part of Christmas over there.
Yeah, so what Christmas cake is in Japan, it's pretty much a strawberry shortcake, honestly. But I don't know how Japan does it, but they like exceed my expectations of strawberry shortcake. Like this cake is delicious. I've had it before. It's really, really good. It's a good little snack. You can get it by the slice or you could get a whole cake. But it's really popular during Christmas time, so you'll see a bunch of strawberries everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never actually had a Christmas cake before. Now that I think about it, I've only been there for Christmas once, so and maybe leading up to it, I guess I was around, but never had a Christmas cake. Now that I think
You
about it,
need to try one.
I'll try one. I'll try one day. One day. I like Christmas in the States better than Japan. You don't really get a feel. I don't want to get too much into that. We could talk about that on a different podcast, but yeah, I'm just not as huge of a. I'm a
I
big
can
Christmas person,
understand.
so I enjoy the environment of Christmas in the States versus Japan, having gone through it once.
I can understand
Um,
that.
yeah. And just a couple other things before we move on to spring. We did mention briefly, but the Sapporo Snow Festival in Hokkaido is definitely another really big touristy attraction during those times. So if you are looking for that, that is a huge, huge, huge festival with a lot of snow sculptures and ice sculptures that are sponsored by various places around town, and it's amazing. I've never personally been. I've seen photos. I have a lot of friends that have gone, but definitely you can check that out if you're going around that time. They do have. You can take a train up there. You can take a plane to Sapporo. They actually have ferries that you can take from different places along the coast that will take you up to um, Sapporo. So that's another option if you're looking to go and want to try something different. Is an overnight ferry that I know when I was on Jet, a lot of people that went on that they had arranged a trip where they did an overnight ferry and then went to um, went to the festival after they arrived.
Hmm, neat. Next is spring, which is probably what a bunch of people know Japan for, honestly.
Yeah,
I feel like every time I talk about traveling in Japan, everyone I talk to, their bucket list is to always go in the spring. So this is like, I guess, the peak tourist season.
what's the first thing you think of when you think of Japan in spring? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Cherry blossoms,
Yeah,
honestly.
it's that's the big thing. I feel like holiday wise there isn't really, well, actually I'll take that back because there is a pretty large holiday we're going to touch on in a little bit, but I feel like really the attraction that comes with spring is the are those cherry blossoms.
Yeah.
It is starting to get a little warmer. It's still chilly, but it's not frigid like the February, January, December
Yeah,
months.
when I went, I pretty much I wore a sweater just to have
Yeah.
something on my arms because it was a little chilly.
Yeah, I would say like a shirt and a light jacket or something like that typically would be enough,
Yeah.
depending on where you are. Obviously, the further north you are, the
Yeah.
more you may need. But depends. But it definitely is it's starting to get a little warmer, especially towards April. But yeah, like the cherry blossoms is really what you what that image of springtime in Japan is. Regardless of where you go, you just have this picturesque scenic background of pink and assorted pinks and whites and
Yeah. I
different
get it.
colors that flutter around to paint a really awesome scene visually.
Which is weird for people who, like, don't know too much about Japan. I feel like sometimes it's a misconception because sometimes I hear people that are like, "I wanna see cherry blossoms in Japan. I'm gonna go in June," and it's like,
Yeah,
cherry blossom season's seasonal. It's not a all year round thing.
You might want to rethink that.
Yeah, you might want to rethink that. So specifically, cherry blossom season is towards the beginning of April. Sometimes it comes early to like the end of March, but who knows
It
what global
depends where you're
warming?
catching it.
Who knows? Yeah, it depends on where you're catching it too. Because if you're like
Yeah.
going to Hokkaido in spring, that's in the beginning of May.
Right.
So you
Right.
really
So
have to determine where you're trying to go, and that will determine where you go find the cherry blossoms. Because like regular northern Japan, I think it's like the middle to end of
it's later.
April.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, they have and actually the news broadcast in Japan, they have a whole segment of weather that is focused on the cherry blossom wave.
yeah.
So like they'll say, "All right, by this date, we're predicting that the cherry blossoms will start to bloom on XYZ date around this time." Because it is a very big thing. It's a very big event for tourists obviously, but also for socially for folks that live in Japan.
yeah.
They have a lot of get-togethers with friends and family underneath the cherry blossoms, and they'll pull out their blue tarps, throw them on the ground, and open up their six packs of Asahi, super dry, and go and enjoy themselves.
yeah.
It's very very common. So it's important, and a lot of people want to know. They love to see that. It's not just a touristy thing for abroad. It's a lot of domestic native Japanese people love that the cherry blossom season.
Yeah. Now, if you are trying to look for flowers, but you don't want to go around a bunch of travel, whether it's tourist or the Japanese, an option for you could be plum blossom season, which is right before cherry blossom season. So close together that a lot of people can't differentiate, what's a plum blossom and what's a cherry blossom.
Yeah.
But the plum blossoms come in about beginning to the end of March. So if you're looking for, still looking at trees, the flowers, the flowering trees, but don't want the crowds, probably beginning to middle of March is going to be a better choice for you. Just because I know some people don't like crowds, and I can't blame them.
Yeah, and really, they'll have certain strips, and you'll know, and you could probably, if you're going on a trip around that time, um, anytime there's like a hill or with a long string of trees, or like a river where there's trees around it, usually people will
Those are the
kind of
hot
camp out
spots.
around those
Yeah.
areas. Just anywhere that's kind of not a concrete jungle.
Yeah.
Where there's patches of grass where they can kind of sit down. Like Yoyogi Park is really popular. What was the area by Sophia? There was Sophia University is right by Yotsuya Station in Tokyo, which is just outside, maybe one or two stops away from Shinjuku,
Well, in
and they
Kyoto,
have a
it's
nice.
the philosopher's path.
Oh yeah, they have a little stretch right there that's really nice that we would used to go to during my study abroad year. Um, but yeah, you for when it comes to Hanami and traveling for that, I mean, you could really just follow a lot of people. They've had travel and follow the cherry blossom wave through the country,
You could do
and
that.
make a trip out of it.
You could.
Which is it's pretty interesting. It's expensive.
Yeah, it takes about a month.
It's not cheap, but you can kind of chase the wave and do that. But there is one other major holiday that we want to discuss because it's
Yes.
definitely a major consideration for anyone traveling to Japan in the springtime, and that is Golden Week. Jen, what is Golden Week?
Golden Week, honestly, is just a week of consecutive national holidays in Japan.
Yeah,
It is a big deal. Um, Even though the holidays don't sound like a big deal, like one of them is like Greenery Day, and
yeah.
one of them, there's Constitution Day, there's
One's like an
Showa
emperor's birthday, I
Day,
think.
yeah,
Yeah,
Showa
or
Day,
yeah.
and then there's Children's Day.
Hmm.
And so you have all these consecutive holidays ramming into about a week span. And pretty much that week is pretty much the beginning of May. Sometimes it does bleed into like the tidbit end of April
Yeah,
sometimes, but it's mostly the beginning of May. Avoid this time. It is chaos, like visualized so bad. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
It is really heavy travel around that time. Expect large crowds at any touristy location that you go to. I've done some traveling during Golden Week. I did a couple times opt into some more or some less conventional options in terms of what I was doing. For example, one of those times that's when I was doing a hitchhiking trip around Shikoku. Some of those temples were crowded, but it wasn't as bad.
Yeah.
But buses, book your reservations out in advance if you're going to be planning on traveling during that time, just because you won't be able to find ad hoc accommodations as simply as you would any other time of the year. It's just something that you really want to take into consideration if you are going to be traveling.
Yeah, because you have all the Japanese traveling at the same time, so you're gonna be kind of, in their crowd of them trying to, enjoy their
Yeah,
holiday.
everyone's off, so a lot of people
Yep.
do domestic travel for themselves. Sometimes they do travel internationally, leaving, so airports may be a little bit more crowded too, for
Mhm.
people that are leaving the country or flying to domestically to somewhere else in Japan. And as Jen mentioned, it can bleed in from the end of April. It's usually going to be like a Thursday, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's about a 6 to 7 day period, depending on when those
Yeah, it
holidays fall.
depends. Yeah.
So just be prepared. And don't say we didn't warn you about Golden Week if you decide to go. But yeah, I would just recommend not traveling around that time if you're going to be going to Japan.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'd rather travel during cherry blossom season than Golden Week.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing I thought about that while we're talking. If you do travel in the end of March and beginning of April, that is spring break for college kids. So there
It
may be a
is.
lot of college kids traveling around too. So that is a little bit of a downtime. It's the end of the school year. The back end of
Mhm.
March and the beginning of April. The new school year starts like well, actually, I think like April 6th or 10th or something like that. But there will be a few weeks at the end of March and the beginning of April when there will be more students out of school and maybe traveling a little bit. So you could see a heightened level of domestic travel as well, but I wouldn't really worry too much about it.
Yeah, but it might be worth it to you. Like we say, like if you are really determined to see the cherry blossoms, then it is worth it. I mean it was worth going. I've done it. And not only to see the cherry blossoms, but in a sense to taste the cherry blossoms.
Yeah,
Japan is so crazy with seasonal food. They really take advantage of people's wallets.
sakura flavored everything.
Literally everything. Like, turn the corner, there's a sakura flavor something. I remember going into a McDonald's and there's like so many sakura themed things. There was like
Yep.
a sakura float,
Sakura
um,
mochi.
sakura mochi, there's sakura donuts, there's sakura everything. Everything has sakura in it. And even if it's not like real sakura, like say the flavor is actually like a cherry or strawberry flavor, they'll still name it sakura because it's pink.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of like a lot of things. You'll see a lot of pink dyed foods and things like that, where it's kind of that season, so everyone's kind of going towards that. Yeah, it's like in New Orleans when you get to Mardi Gras season, anything that you get, the people put purple, green, and gold everywhere.
Yeah, and everyone names everything king cake flavor, so it's
Right,
like, "Oh, gotta grab it."
exactly. King
It's
cake
exactly
flavored
like
ice
that.
cream, king cake
It's
flavored
exactly
coffee.
like that.
Yeah, so it's kind of something to be aware of. If you're looking, you want to try something seasonal, that is definitely what you need to look for, just sakura something.
Yeah. Now, something that is the polar opposite of winter is summer.
Oh, yes.
Summers can be brutal.
Can be?
Yeah, it can be. Some
No, they are.
Okay,
They
listen,
are.
you and I are completely different people. I have a really, really good tolerance to heat, I have to say. Only because when I was in elementary school and in high school, I would be the weirdo that would be wearing a sweatshirt in the summer down here. I don't know why, I just would. I would have a sweatshirt and jeans. Like, I would be covered. So I'm really good with heat. So Japan heat doesn't really bother me, but I can understand how it bothers some people because it can be very humid in most places. So you're going to be hot and you're going to be sweaty.
Yes. Yeah, and pick up wherever you go. You might be able to be fortunate enough. Someone will hand you a fan on the street from an uchiwa. They'll hand you a fan, like kind of as a promotion item, like just or tissue or something like that. Take that and keep it because those
Yeah.
types of things. I mean, you can get them at like convenience stores or anywhere really, but a hand fan is going to be definitely something you want to keep in your literally in your back pocket or with you as you travel in the summer because you're going to need it to fan yourself. There's no escape from that heat. You may go into like department stores or things like that. Sometimes we'll have fans or central air,
Yeah.
but oh my goodness, if you're going anywhere that's going to require being outside for an extended period of time, keep yourself hydrated, keep yourself cool with that, whatever you can do, because it can get brutally hot. They had, I want to say it was 2 years ago, a really bad heat wave where people were actually dying. Like they
Yeah, there
were
was so many
like,
people.
yeah, people were dropping like flies. Like it just the intense heat, like heat advisories and things like that to not stay outside. And a lot of it was like elderly people who just they couldn't handle the heat. But I mean, they had some young people too that were having to get the ambulances called on them.
Yeah.
So just be wary of that. That's just take precautions, know yourself, know your body and what you can handle, but just know that that's that time of year is very warm, and I say warm very loosely. It's very hot. Um,
Yeah, so if you're
and
like a heavy traveler, you like to be on the go, you're very fast with your travel, if you feel that you are not going to be able to take the heat, maybe you'll consider slowing down your travel, not being as punctual. Like 2 o'clock, I need to be at this temple, 4 o'clock, I need to be at that place.
yeah,
Maybe just give yourself some time to slowly get where you're going. So that way, if you do get hot, you can maybe run into somewhere to just get some air, maybe get a drink. Really just take your time traveling. Don't try to rush if you feel like you can't.
definitely. Like take your time, enjoy yourself, but keep yourself cool because and they have some these really cool that they sell at convenience stores, like cooling towels where if
Yeah,
you kind of wet them, you can kind of put them on like your head
they're really
or
nice.
whatever. Yeah, they're really nice. And then I think I mentioned this on our convenience store episode too, but those cooling wipes that have like menthol like kind of seeped in, you can wipe down your skin if you're sweating, and they'll kind of like cool you down a little bit too. I
Yeah.
found those pretty clutch when I was outside because I did this crazy thing of I thought it was a great idea to walk from Shibuya to Tokyo Station, which took me
Oh
about three
no.
hours. I don't know what I was thinking. I was bored. I was in Tokyo. I was jet lagged and had just spent a long night of karaokeing and drinking with some college friends, and I needed to sweat it out. Again, don't know why I thought this was a good idea, but I needed to
Yeah,
just
no,
kill
that's
some
not a good
time.
idea.
I definitely sweated it out. I'm glad I had backup clothes in my bag because I looked like I had just gotten out of a swimming pool.
Oh no.
But yeah, it is hot. But I did make a joke earlier in the about a fifth season in Japan. That's the rainy season.
And that's this
Um,
season. It's in the
yeah,
summer.
especially in June. June is something you want to be wary of. A lot of people in New Orleans are kind of used to that because we have
Yeah.
hurricane season, which kind of starts off in the middle of June or so. It's similar there. There's a lot of rain almost daily. I would want to say you may not rain all day, but it will rain at some point during the day.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that when you're planning as well. Just that rain could sabotage your plans for any
Yeah, so, like, if you
outdoor
were trying to go on a boat
traveling.
ride and, like, a moat in the castle or maybe the river, just be mindful that, it might rain and you might not to get to go on that boat ride.
Invest in a poncho or an umbrella.
Yes, don't feel like you need to pack an umbrella, trust me, they'll have
Oh,
several
you
for you
can.
to buy over in Japan.
Oh
They
yes,
know.
you can get your little the token clear umbrella at 7-Eleven for 300
Yes,
yen.
yes. They know
Just
all about rainy season.
don't get the small one because then it won't really cover you. That's
Yeah,
really
you gotta get the
tiny.
big one.
Yeah. But yeah, so in the summer, there's a few festival or not festivals, I'm sorry, holidays that you really want to consider planning some of your trips around for better or for worse. Better is Tanabata,
Yes.
which depending on where you're traveling to could be in July or it could be in August. So in Sendai, along with some other places, in Iwaki too, is where I used to live. They celebrated Tanabata in August,
Oh,
but I
okay.
think the rest of the country does in July.
July, yeah. Kyoto celebrates in July. Okayama celebrates it in July. Hiroshima celebrates it in July. Yeah,
Yeah,
a bunch of them celebrate it in July.
yeah, and what Tanabata is, you'll see a lot of bamboo shoots and kind of branches of trees, and from them you'll see some like little things dangling from them, which are basically wishes people have. They hang them on after they write down their wish on this card or piece of paper. Um, Something they wish it will come true. They'll hang it from the tree. I don't remember the story completely behind the Tanabata, but yeah, it is about two star-crossed lovers essentially separated by an ocean, and they can only meet at a time of the year.
Yeah, this one
Yeah.
day out of the whole year. It's so
Oh, um,
romantic.
so yeah, if you're going to be traveling around Japan, you might see that in July. It's July 7th. Or if you are traveling through Sendai, Sendai is really where the big Tanabata. I want to say that's kind of like where it's famous for is
I think
Tanabata
so.
in
Yeah.
August 7th. But a lot of cities will celebrate it, and you'll see those types of decorations around that time of year. Um,
Yeah, so like Doug said, this is probably a good one to go for because it's not as crowded as all the other festivals and holidays going
Yeah, and
on.
and there are a lot of anywhere you go really. The summertime, in my opinion, and it's one of my favorite times to travel, despite the heat. My last few trips going to Japan pre-COVID were during the end of July, beginning of August, and I really enjoy that time of year. Not because of the heat, but because of the small town festivals that you can stumble across if you are traveling through smaller areas in around the country. For example, my old hometown of Iwaki has a string of festivals I do daily, pretty much, uh, whether it's a firework festival or just a dancing through the street festival, odori, as they may call it in different places. Um, they'll have those throughout various parts of town every night of the week for about a week. So I love going to those. They have all their little stalls with all the different foods and games. They'll have a sound stage with some performers, and they'll make do some kind of like demonstrations or songs or things like that. I love going to those types of festivals. They're great. It's a great way to experience, especially in the smaller towns, experience kind of a different side of Japan that maybe you can't always get when you're traveling to the
Yeah.
big places like Tokyo or Kyoto.
And then you have the end, like the end of summer in August. You need to watch out for.
But it's actually in the middle. It's like around the
Oh, it's in the
14th.
middle?
Yeah, it's like 10th through 15th or something like the second full week
Okay.
of August, I want to say. Maybe it's August 12th. I don't know why the number's sticking out of my mind, but yeah, Obon.
It is a hectic time to be in Japan.
It is. It's kind of like New Year's, in that a lot
It
of people go
is. It
home.
really is.
A lot
Yeah,
of people travel home to their old hometowns. Obon is essentially you're coming uh, to pay homage to your ancestors. They're
correct.
going to visit they do what they call Ohaka Mairi, where they'll go and visit their graves. And a lot of times they'll have these little like lantern festivals where they'll stream these lit lanterns down rivers. But but really it is a time when a lot of people do, if they're not traveling home, they are traveling somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
They're taking the opportunity to travel
because a lot of people
during
will be
their
off of work.
holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of like I don't want to say a golden week of sorts, but a lot of companies will give their employees that week off or a few days off during that week. So a lot of people do take the chance if they're not traveling home to visit family, they're going elsewhere to enjoy themselves during that time off. So
yeah. So, like you've probably seen that we're talking about, if you're not fighting tourists, you're fighting the local travelers
yeah,
on transportation. So, um, as much as some people don't like the rain, probably the best time to go during the summer if you're trying to avoid all crowds is going to be June because no one is traveling during June.
yeah. It's the rainy season. No one really wants to go. So I mean, if you really wanted to get over there and try to minimize the crowds, June is not a bad time. It's just you got to be
It's
tolerant
not.
of
Of possible
yeah,
rain.
rain
There might be
delays
rain.
and
Yeah,
having to be really adaptable with your plan for what you want to
exactly.
do, or just plan everything indoors.
Yeah. But, during the summer, you have some really good places that you could go to. Not a lot of people think about beaches when they think about Japan.
Yeah,
but they're there, and it's a different culture all on its own. We could talk about beaches in a totally different episode. But a popular tourist destination is Okinawa. Has like the most amazing beaches, the most beautiful beaches probably in all of Japan, just because of the coral. um they're literally like in the sea. I mean, it's a great place to go.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to go to Okinawa once, and I was only there for a couple days. Unfortunately, that was the unfortunate part. I was only there for a couple days, but Okinawa is great. It's really warm, obviously a lot of time of the year. Actually, it's way further
Yeah.
south, but the beaches there are phenomenal. I just saw a friend of mine who was in Okinawa posting beach pictures, and I was like, oh my god, it looks so good. The
Yeah, so if
water
you're a
is just
beach
like
person,
crystal blue, that blue color you see when you look at those ideal beach locations. You're like, wow. And I'm stuck here
beach.
at my desk for work. Ugh, I hate you. Yeah, but oh man, if you can go to the Okinawa for beaches, it's really fun. It is a about a 3 hour flight from Tokyo. So just keep that in mind when you're planning that travel. It's not a quick hop, skip, and a jump, but just it will take some coordination because you have to go through an airport as opposed to taking a train.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, a couple other places we mentioned Sendai about going there for the Tanabata festival. Another place that we didn't mention though was Aomori. They have a very famous festival in Aomori City called Nebuta, which is kind of like I like to equate it to like a Japanese Mardi Gras of sorts. A lot of these big floats that are lit up that parade through the streets of Aomori City, and they'll have in between them they'll have like dance groups and performance groups. So it does kind of feel like that there's no people riding on these floats or throwing things like in Mardi Gras parades here, but it kind of gave me that I was able to make that equivalency for them.
Yeah,
Like
the
it was
same
it was something I felt
vibe.
comfortable with. It made me feel kind of at home, like I was at a Mardi
Yeah.
Gras parade. They even had like the barricades to protect you from going onto the street. But yeah, they it's a really really fantastic festival, but it's very crowded. So if you are traveling there, just and it is further up north, so it does take some time to get there. Just be aware that the crowds will be real. The crowds will be there, and that it to get there you would need to plan in advance. It's not something you could just kind of get up there for. Um, and then one other place, Jen, have you heard of the Awa Odori?
Yes, I have. I have. I've seen like pictures. I always wanted to go because I love the dance festival. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, it's probably one of the more famous dance festivals in Japan. It takes place in Tokushima, which is on
Hmm.
Shikoku, and it's a massive, like kind of a synchronized dance type type parade
Yeah.
where like a lot of groups will just kind of dance these different songs that they go through the streets. It's very famous.
And it does not sound like a big deal, but
It
it
is.
is. This festival is so crowded, and because it's on Shikoku, on an island, there's not many places to stay, honestly. I tried to actually go to one before, and it was so crowded that I couldn't find, like, reservations
That's
anywhere.
true. It's not too far from Kyoto, right?
No, no, it's kinda far, but, I was gonna just take the trip anyway because, like I said, I always wanted to see it.
Yeah,
Um, but it's so crowded and there's not many places to stay, honestly, in the area.
it really
So you
is.
really have to book it in advance.
Yeah.
'Cause a lot of the Japanese go, because they love to, like, take pictures of it and, like, celebrate. So you really need to book it in advance if you're trying to go to something like that.
And if you can make it there, then there are I guess festivals, Awa Odori festivals that take place in other cities, kind of
Yeah.
act as like mini versions of it. And you'll see
Yeah,
this
it's
too
not like
for
the full scale,
yeah,
but
they'll,
yeah.
they'll do it like in Tokyo. I think they have a Tokyo version of it. And same thing for
Yeah.
Nebuta actually. I know Iwaki had one, a very small version of it, but something like that. So if you can't make it to one of the big ones, they do have some miniature scale versions of those festivals that you can attend.
Yeah. Now, to go on to seasonal foods, just
Mm.
like in winter, how, there's a bunch of seasonal foods that warm you up. In the summer, there's a bunch of foods that cool you down. One of them being my favorite in the whole wide world is kakigori, which is shaved ice. For us New Orleans folk, it's kind of like a snowball.
It basically is a snowball, yeah.
It's basically a snowball, but I really, really enjoy it. It's so good because, like, there's 2 sides to it. You can get the cheapo kind with, like, the cheapo syrup, or you could get the really nice gourmet kakigori, which have, like, the real fruit juice and, like, they have fruit on top, and oh my gosh, Doug.
Yeah, yeah, they're really good. I usually get those at a festival. Like,
Oh, no, not me. I go for the good
no,
stuff. I go to places to get
see,
them.
my seasonal summer foods, and we have a few others that we're gonna talk about, but I always just think of festival food because that's like my thing I
Yeah,
equate summer to is just like takoyaki and okonomiyaki and, like that
yeah.
kind of stuff. Like
Festival
just
foods, yeah.
that's my summer food, I guess. I don't know.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, no, I usually go to, like, these restaurant places that only serve kakigori, and so it's, like, the real legit ones that look really, really nice and have, like, the really good quality
You
ingredients,
fancy,
like,
huh?
bruh, I am when it comes to sweets, I am serious about my sweets, okay? Like, it has to be legit. If I'm gonna go for sweets, I'm gonna go hard, okay? I'm not gonna just go for a wimpy
I
little
gotcha. No
kakigori.
one's judging here. It's a judgment-free zone. But yeah, other foods like similar to like the springtime when they had sakura flavored everything. You were telling me before that you had noticed that there's a lot of mint flavored stuff now.
Oh my gosh, yeah. By the extraordinary amount of mint flavored snacks in
Hmm.
Japan, I am alarmed by how many people like mint in Japan because I was not expecting that. The trend happened about 3 years ago,
Oh,
and
okay.
it has been just steadily, continually going. Actually, right now, if you go into, like, konbinis, um, you can find mint flavored things, like, right now in the stores. Like, they started early for some reason. So if you like mint flavored things, Japan has got your back on that because for some reason it's very, very popular. Another, like, flavor that's popular during the summer is peach. Peach season begins in the summer, so, you'll find, like, a lot of peach flavored drinks, snacks, anything that you could think of. So if you're into mint and peach, there's a lot of that going on in kombinis.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big peach person. I like that peach tea stuff. Ooh, that's really good. I mean, that's not seasonal, but when you said peach, that was the first thing that comes to mind. Peach tea.
Well, my peach Mitsuya cider
Ooh, there you go.
it
Are we gonna
is
talk
a
about Mitsuya
seasonal
cider again?
drink. Dude, I could talk about Mitsuya cider every day.
I know every day I think about it, every day I cry because I can't order some. Uh,
But let's get to food. You were
yeah,
telling me how you have a love for cold noodles.
yeah. So all you noodle lovers out there, that sounds so funny. All you noodle lovers out there, there are seasonal, and I would say seasonal, but like cold noodle dishes that you really can get that are really popular in the summer. You'll see a lot of restaurants start to offer this. Um, Two that really specifically come to mind are somen, which is basically boiled noodles that are then chilled by putting them in ice water, and then you basically pick them up and then dip them in this like what's called mensiu, which is like your dipping sauce, specifically for noodles. It's a very simple dish, just noodles and sauce, and you just dip it in there.
Yeah, it
It
can be simple or it could be super complicated. In Kyoto, there's a very famous restaurant up in the mountains,
Okay.
and they actually bring the chilled noodles down to you by bamboo shoot,
Oh wow.
and you have to fish them out with chopsticks.
Oh, okay.
It's very popular during the summer, like, a lot of people love to go do that in
That
Kyoto.
reminds me at a party that I went to at this bar in Iwaki. One of the summer parties, they had one of those bamboo shoots where they would basically just drop noodles down, and you'd have
Yeah,
them
you
to
can
like a
make them.
yeah, yeah,
You
you know,
can make it by just, like, hollowing out a bamboo,
yeah.
like, long branch of bamboo, and you could do it at home, but there's this, like, fancy restaurant by the river in the mountains in Kyoto, and it's like super fancy. And yeah, you could experience that kind of thing during the summer. It's really refreshing, apparently.
Yeah, and one other dish is hiyashi chuka, which is they're Chinese noodles that are chilled, and on top of them you'll have like strips of ham, you'll have strips of like an egg omelet, like a yaki tamago, um, uh, cucumber strips, and then sliced tomatoes. And sorry that I apologize. I actually ate hiyashi chuka like this past weekend, and I just remembered a stupid like dad joke that I made out of it.
Oh no.
I told my son, I said, "Hey, did you hear about the story?" And he's like, "What story?" I'm like, "It's from," and I held up the strip of like egg. I said, "A long time ago," and he
Oh
was like,
no.
"Stop!" He was like, "What?" And then my Manami was just like, "Oh my god, what are you doing?" Like,
Bringing those Japanese dad
yeah,
jokes
yeah, it
here.
was a nice Oyaji gag dad joke.
Oh jeez.
I'm sure everyone's just turning off the podcast right now after that one. Uh, but yeah, those types of chilled dishes are really good. I love chilled noodle dishes. They have a lot of restaurants all started offering like chilled ramen, and other things too. So if you're adventurous and you like ramen, but have only had hot, then you go in the summer. Give a chilled noodle dish a chance because they are surprisingly refreshing and good, and they feel a little bit lighter than your heavy. I feel typically after eating hot ramen, I feel a little heavy, a little bloated. But
Mm,
uh, but after these like the noodle dishes that are chilled, I feel a little bit lighter. It feels more refreshed. So maybe that's why that's a summer dish when you don't want to feel hot and heavy after, and then go back out into the heat.
yeah, yeah. But let's cool down then. So the fall season.
Yeah, fall's great. It's probably, I mean, I know a lot of people love spring, but I think fall time is fantastic. And it's similar to spring in that it has a nature aspect to it that really gives it a stunning visual. Um,
Yeah, the autumn
yeah,
foliage.
yeah. It's the koyo or momiji, um are things where the leaves start changing colors and they start to become these vibrant yellows and oranges and reds, and it paints such a beautiful picture. If you go into a very um, tree filled area, like a mountainside or hills or something, you'll see this, and it looks just absolutely beautiful. This typically happens at some point during October, again, depending on where you are in the country. Um,
Yeah, I would say where you are in the country because I went in November and that was pretty nice to go
yeah,
to.
it starts at towards the tail end of October, and then really November is kind of, I would say, peak.
Yeah, but
Koyo,
November
yeah.
is pretty peak. Yeah.
It does start.
But that's when it starts to get
Yeah,
cold
I was just
too.
about to
So
say, yeah.
definitely bring your winter clothes because it gets cold, especially if you go up north. It can get really cold.
Yeah, yeah, it's really, it starts to get a little chillier during that time. It still may be hot through September, and you may get spots where it's hot and then cold and then hot and then cold, kind of similar to like New Orleans fall. But yeah, you really grow to I enjoy it because I think it's a little bit cooler. I'm coming down from the heat as opposed to looking forward to the heat. So it's nice for me, and when I travel and when I have traveled in the past and lived there. There are some holidays that take place, and they're very few and far between. There's a couple like 3-day weekends that pop in there, but on the odd occasion where um, a holiday let's say the Saturday, Sunday, and then a holiday falls on a Monday, and then a holiday falls on a Wednesday. You get what's called Silver Week because there's a Japanese law that says that if there's a day in between two national holidays, um, and I forget the names of the holidays. One is the autumnal equinox, and the other one is something else. I just can't remember.
Isn't it? Oh, geez. Isn't it? It's not
No,
Thanksgiving, but it's
that's
like
in November, I think. But not like Thanksgiving, like our Thanksgiving. It's like early
yeah,
November,
it's a
but
different
yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Um, I can't remember. Is it
I
the
have no idea.
Thanks for the Old People Day? I can't. I forgot
Yeah,
the official
it's
name
not
for it.
like an old people, but it's like
Appreciating
thanks for
your
people who
elders.
are
Type. Yeah.
working. Yeah, it's to
No, I don't know.
appreciate those who are working.
But
Yeah.
but yeah. it's one of those
something
weird
like that.
situations where the calendar falls just the right way, and it creates a holiday called Silver Week, which is very much like Golden Week in that you would have a weekend and then 3 days off. So I want to say the first time this really got coined Silver Week was back in 2009 when I was actually in Japan on Jet, and I did end up doing a little bit of a road trip with some friends, um, which was again a great time to travel, because it's kind of an unexpected holiday, or maybe not unexpected, but it's something that you would typically have just a day here and a day there. But since it all falls in that unique time, it gives you 5 days off in altogether. So
Yeah, but like you, all the other Japanese people are also
right, so
off,
that's
and
one thing
they're
to
also
consider.
traveling.
Yeah, it's a domestic holiday for everybody, not just travelers. But one thing that is sad about this is that it doesn't happen every year. It happens the next one, or the most recent one was last year, 2020, when no one could travel. So that was unfortunate, but um, fortunately, there's another one coming up in 5 years. 2026 is the next one. So it happens about every 6 to 7 years. It's not as frequent or as common as people would hope and want, but it does happen. So just be aware what year you're traveling in, and what those holidays and where they're falling in September. So
Yeah, and even though it's not a holiday, with the autumn foliage, you still need to watch out for that because not only are the Japanese people trying to enjoy the leaves changing, but I do find from a tourist view, that autumn is becoming, um, more prominent as a time to go visit Japan. A lot of people are starting to realize the benefits of going in the fall with the leaves changing. So it is an actual tourist like season to go during the changing of the leaves. So definitely consider that too. It's starting to become like cherry blossom season, so you're gonna see a lot of touristy crowds there.
yeah, I did go once, in like the middle to end of September, and I actually enjoyed traveling around that time because it wasn't the peak tourist seasons. Flights ended up being a little bit cheaper. um it's not as crowded at their typical tourist spots. So that is something to consider when you are traveling, that this is a good time of year to travel. It is
It
starting to
is.
pick up, but it's still, I would say, fall and winter are probably the least traveled and least frequented seasons if you had to pick from the four. Summer and spring definitely are the more favorable ones,
Yeah.
just from when people have availability to travel and whatnot.
And of course, it will depend on where you go,
Yep.
like the hot destinations, but you can space them out because, mountains are very mountainous. So there's a lot of space to go around. So, think about going to places like Nikko or Niigata. I personally went to Nagano when I did the autumn season. So you really want to go to those mountainous places because not only are they going to be spacious, but you're actually going to see a bunch of trees since trees are on mountains. I wouldn't know why you wouldn't go to the mountains if you're going during the fall season, but definitely try to look up good mountain ranges to go to or mountain areas to go to so that way you can really see the vast colors that you'll see.
Yeah, and some of those places we had talked about previously. Nikko is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place to travel to at this time of year. There's a
Yeah.
lot of nature surrounding some really beautiful tourist spots. So there's some really great shrines there, um, that you can travel to. Another place that I actually was fortunate enough to travel to around October, but it wasn't during. It was just before the leaves started to change, or
Just
just as they
before.
were. But was Izumo in Shimane Prefecture, where they have Izumo Taisha, which is, um, to give a little background about Izumo Taisha. Throughout Japan, in October, it's called Kanazuki, which means the month with no gods, because all the gods leave their homes and places around Japan and then travel to this Izumo Taisha. And but in Izumo, that month is called Kami Arizuki, which means the month of gods, because everyone's there, all the gods there. But it's also that temple itself is such a beautiful, beautiful temple. It has the largest, like the largest rope. a handmade
Mhm.
rope, in I think in the country, um, and its backdrop is mountains, like very, very forested mountains. So if you catch it at the end of October, um, during that Kamiarizuki, you may be able to capture some really, really, really stunning photos with that autumn backdrop of those multicolored orange, yellow, red leaves, and it is so nice, so nice. So if you do travel there, now keep in mind it's a very common time to travel or that time of year is a very common time to travel to Izumo. So keep that in mind if you are traveling there. But if you're in that area, it's definitely something that I would recommend traveling to. It's one of my top spots. I love Izumo Taisha. I love that area for Matsue and Izumo. So much to do there, and it has so much to offer. And if you go at that time, you're not going to be disappointed.
Now for some seasonal foods during that time.
Sweet potatoes.
Yeah, you brought up sweet potatoes, and I totally got oblivious to it. I totally forgot, and I can't believe I forgot about it because it's so prominent in Japan. You'll see people selling, steamed sweet potatoes everywhere.
Do you ever see those carts that are they're like on the side of the road or like a little stall, where they're cooking like yaki imo?
Yeah.
But did all right, so maybe this is just the one. I always equate it to this, and maybe it's just where I live that had this, but there was like a cart, and this guy, as he would kind of park his cart at the corner of the street near my apartment, he had like a microphone that would just repeatedly go emo yakimo, like that the whole time, and it's just like burned in my brain. So anytime like sweet potatoes, I'd ask friends, and they're like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah, I can't say that I've experienced that. Yet again, I lived in Kyoto, so I'm not sure if that's like just in like rural areas maybe
Maybe,
that
yeah, I don't
has
know.
that,
It,
but
it literally called out to me though. It made me want to eat sweet potato.
What I found a lot of during the fall season is chestnuts. Everything is flavored like chestnuts, and it kind of drives me nuts because I don't like chestnuts. Like sweets, because Doug, like, this is gonna be a theme for me. I like sweets. But during the fall season, it's very disappointing because a bunch of sweets have chestnuts in it or flavored like chestnuts, and it drives me nuts because I'm just like, I want to eat sweets, but you're not letting me eat sweets. So I have to like distinctively find sweets that are not with chestnuts. And it's very hard to do because fall, I don't know why, but they love chestnuts.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy. But something that I did discover about fall, especially when I was in Nagano for some reason, popular season for apple and pears. Apple and pear flavor things are everywhere, especially apples. I found that just fall season, I don't know why, but it's just apple season and there's apple everything, which FYI, I had apple, I think was it a Coke? I think it was apple flavored Coke. That sounds right. Yeah, I think it was a Coke.
Apple flavored Coke?
Yeah, it was so crazy.
Sounds gross.
No, it's actually really
But then again,
good.
I drink flavored soda every once in a while. So maybe I don't know.
It was pretty good. I liked
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
I'm just trying to imagine what that would taste like.
Now, what is weird is the apple flavored Kit Kats because you bite into it because you see the chocolate, and then like you get this apple taste with the chocolate. And I'm just like, whoa, that's freaky. So that's something that's weird for me.
Yeah.
But that's all the food, and I mean, we covered all four seasons, Doug.
We did. We did. I do have a question for you.
Oh boy.
So what is your favorite season then to travel to Japan?
Okay. Well,
If you had to pick one.
my favorite is probably going to be. Oh, Doug, it's so hard to figure this out because, okay, my most traveled is summer because of my job.
Right.
I've been during the summer several times. I love the summer because of kakigori, literally. Um, but I think my favorite season is going to have to be fall.
Okay.
Even though I'm not a fan of too much of like the fall seasonal foods, um, I like the nature of fall. Something about the leaves changing. We don't have that down here. We have alive and
Yeah,
dead
I was about to say
for
we don't really get
trees.
that color, the color change that
We
is
don't get the
so, which
color.
is one of those reasons why like it's, people joke about like the whole like Four Seasons Japan thing, but it's true like in that regard. In New Orleans, Louisiana, we don't have that type of color change in our trees. Like you said, they either fall off,
We
the
don't.
leaves fall off green, or they or they don't really go through that nice.
Or they're dead or they're
Yeah, they're just
non-existent. There's no
trees or not, it's branches or trees, one of the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I agree. I think that it's such a pretty time, and it's something that I do take for granted. Living here, you just like, oh yeah, I remember driving through the mountains in the fall and just being like, man, this is beautiful.
Yeah. Now, ask me that a few years from now when tourists discover how amazing fall is, because then I might change my mind again because I do like spring, but it is so crowded with tourists that it kind of takes away from the experience. For me, that's at least what I got from it when I went during cherry blossom season. So
Yeah.
I'd have to say fall is my favorite because I don't have too much of the crowd. But that could change in the next few years, or maybe if some of you who are listening to this podcast and will take my word for it, now you know my secret. Fall is the best season. What's your favorite?
I would have to say summer. I'm just like a big,
Summer. Okay.
as much as I hate the heat, I
I know
really,
you always complain
I
about it.
know, I really hate the heat, but at the same time, I really enjoy um going to all those festivals because I again where I usually would go and stay. Um, my mother-in-law's house has a festival once, usually around the corner from there, about one around the time we usually go, and then a few days later, there's one where I used to live. So I would go and try to check those all out. And I just enjoy doing that kind of stuff. It's fun. People watching, doing that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And it's just a good time. A lot of the friends also are out for Obon. So I can usually kind of hook up with them and grab food or drink or something and meet up. So that's typically when I would prefer to go. My I'm not doing the super touristy thing. We'll usually do like one tourist trip, a vacation, but usually I'm just going more for hanging out. But I just love that aspect, that going to different festivals throughout the areas and kind of experiencing a more local community as opposed to like more of the touristy stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'll say also, while I hate the cold and being in Japan during cold times because it's absolutely frigid. I had a really awesome, it was not awesome at the time, but looking back, it was awesome. Um, I did at New Year's Day or New Year's morning at like 4 in the
Oh,
morning.
jeez.
I went with a good friend of mine, actually, John Loynes from our earlier episode on our podcast, um, invited me to participate in an omikoshi um, festival. Are you familiar with omikoshi?
I don't think so.
So omikoshi is basically those little small like shrines that are portable and on the
Oh,
wooden
you got
beams.
invited to one?
Yep, and
Oh,
the one
that's
about
nice.
this
That's pretty
one,
exclusive.
yeah, it's he does a lot of these,
Oh, that's cool.
and he invited me to go. I had actually been invited a couple times, but when I was on Jet, I was like, nah, I'm out of the country, I can't go. Sorry, man. But this time I was there, and I'm like, John, I need to go, and he's like, all right, well, this is what you need, and basically you're wearing a fundoshi. That's it.
Yeah.
So you are basically butt naked except for the little like sumo diaper looking thing. And tabi socks, which I bought. I had to end up going to buy a fundoshi, and I went and bought tabi socks. And it is probably in Celsius, for those listening that understand Celsius, about 1 to 0 degrees Celsius, which is about 32 to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, outside at 4 in the morning. You're basically huddled around a tiny fire at a temple near the beach, um, drinking sake to warm up your body. I'm literally naked, basically, freezing my ass off. Um, and then after they get started, we all pick up the temple and then we walk it into the ocean because we're walking to the beach. We
Oh,
carry
it's
it through the
you went
street.
to one of those?
Yeah, and then into
Oh.
the Pacific Ocean,
Oh,
again, 5
Lord.
AM in the morning when it's literally freezing outside, wearing nothing. My actually, the undertow of the tide ripped off my tabi sock, so I had only one. When I came out, I only had one tabi sock on. So, I was like, "I don't know what happened to the other one, it's gone." Yeah, that was that was one of my more memorable, um, experiences over there. It was just so fun. Again, not at the time, it was really cold, but, I really had a blast doing that. That was
So summer and winter. So you like to torture yourself.
Yeah, I guess I like the extremes. I feel like temperature-wise, the fall and the spring are best, but,
Yeah,
um,
temperature-wise, they are.
I like to I don't know, I just like doing those, like, festival things. That's just more of my I love doing that kinda stuff and participating in that. So, that's where my answers are gonna be.
That's great. Good. All right.
Alright, so hopefully, that's pretty much all we had today for our podcast on the weather. Not the weather, oh my god, the seasons. Well, we talked about the weather too.
Yeah, we talked about
Uh,
the weather too.
but, hopefully all you listeners out there will, kinda have a nice, idea, if you didn't already, of what to expect at the different times of year. So, when you're planning your next trip, you'll know what to do, what to expect, and where to go.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning into the Crew of Japan podcast. This week, we gave you information about Japan's 4 seasons that could benefit your Japan travel plans for your next trip. During what season would you like to visit Japan? Have you already been? What season did you experience? Share with us on our social media. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Crew of Japan Podcast. That's KREWEOFJAPAN Podcast. While you're there, follow and let us know how you're enjoying the podcast. That's it for today. Until next time.